China's having a serious issue with the nuclear power plants. Fucking
Is
China.
that going to cause fallout, and are we going to have to go into another fucking lockdown thing because of it?
Oh god, don't say that. The government might be listening. They might take it as a challenge.
I mean, honestly, at that point, just nuke China.
Well, it couldn't, not like it'd do much more damage.
Nuking China would be completely ineffective. You realise that? It's too spread out. It's not. Nukes are not particularly good or useful weapons.
Yeah.
But it's good for the
I
memes.
just want the Chinese government to not be a thing.
Then just nuke the shit out of Pyongyang. Send a message.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the
that's
thing,
all it
too.
is, really.
People rip into Trump for saying the Chinese virus, like, oh, that's racist because he's saying Chinese, and I'm like, okay, when the Democrats say Russian disinformation or Russian this or Russian that, are they instructing people within the U.S. to, like, beat the shit out of anyone who immigrated from Russia or descended from Russian immigrants? Like, no, obviously not.
Yes.
When the Democrats say Russia, 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 like, they're obviously citing a geopolitical enemy, like, which is like, you know, I don't agree. The way they're doing that is like this conspiracy theory shit, but it's like, I'll give them the pass on this. They're citing a geopolitical enemy. They're not saying beat up everyone of Russian descent in the US. And so it's like when Trump says China virus, he's obviously citing a geopolitical enemy, not saying beat up every
the CCP,
Chinese person in the US.
He should have called it the CCP. He should have called it the CCP virus.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like, I got like a memo from my university my last year there where it was like, don't say stuff like the China virus or the Chinese virus. I'm like, and I resolved immediately. I'm like, okay, I'm going to call it the CCP virus then.
Well,
so that I can be
don't
very
think
clear about who I'm attacking.
I don't think he's even calling it referring to the geopolitical enemy when he says the China virus. I think he's just referring to it in the same way as people refer to dengue fever or Ross River fever. It came from China. It's a virus.
No, but based on the fact that it's Trump, he's referring to more than that. He's also referring to China being a geopolitical enemy, which is like, I mean, that context is there, but it's also like, that's a completely fair context because fuck China.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, so it's not anything nefarious, but it is definitely referencing a geopolitical enemy as well.
I mean, I think anyone who doesn't think there's going to be a war with China now is just an idiot. There's going to be some kind of legitimate conflict with China in the next.
And honestly, my wondering is, why are we waiting for China to be more ready about that?
Well, exactly, but I mean that is what's happening at the minute. But it's,
like, I don't want to declare World War III, but like, come on,
get it over with.
Like, we can't like fucking wait for China to eclipse the U.S. and then like do that shit. Like, why?
Lack of will.
Yeah, politicians don't have spines. They're not interested.
Lack of will to do what they'll continue to try and placate them, but you know they're not going to get a choice about it.
Yeah, as Ricky Gervais said, like,
what was China's taking Taiwan? I mean, where else are they going to go?
As Ricky Gervais said, if ISIS had a streaming platform, you'd call your agent.
Yeah. That was when he was at that awards thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was fucking beautiful. My favorite part of that was like, this guy wanted to kill himself in the series. Spoiler alert, there's a season 2. So obviously he didn't kill himself, just like Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, come on, I know he's your friend, but I don't care. That was a piss poor Ricky Gervais, but I'll pass that off on the fact that I'm drunk off my ass off that 151 shit.
I mean, it was he was on point that night.
Yeah. Well, he was also one of the people who came out in defense of Dankula, right?
Yeah, I think he was.
Yeah.
Well, a few.
Not. I mean, he came out a little bit. He could have done a lot more.
Yeah.
Okay, Billy Blog says, if countries keep building nuclear power stations, it might mean we couldn't attack them without setting off multiple meltdowns. Like, yeah, shit, that's another point too.
No, that's not really how nuclear reactors work.
But
Nuclear
it is
reactors
also
fail.
like, I have all these friends who are like
Modern.
like utilitarians, and they're hyper optimistic about AI and shit. Like, oh, super intelligent AI will like create happiness machines and shit. And I'm like, no,
Hardly.
this is gonna come down to one group of people completely fucking another, or like the rulers of humanity turning us to a Brave New World type society where we completely lose all human dignity and bonds that give our life any qualitative, serious value. We all just become stimulated genitalia as our role as human beings. Whereas we'd essentially be no different than a penis getting jerked off constantly, like just getting pleasure but creating nothing, adding nothing valuable to society.
No, I don't think that'll happen. I don't think it could happen. I don't think. I don't think. I don't think it's possible to contain humans in that way. I mean, if you think there aren't constant, like in North Korea, if you think there aren't constant rebellion and stuff that just gets squashed, that you're not
No, but I'm
seeing because
talking
it's not
about them
reported.
having fantasies about like when technology
Oh
advances
yeah,
to
no,
the
I'm
point
just.
where you can reliably fuck with human psychology in such an
Well, you can
intimate
already
way.
reliably fuck with human psychology.
Right, but it's like they jerk off that power and they're like, yeah, we can create a better world. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah, but
that's
just it doesn't.
fucked.
But it just wouldn't work. It's not possible to. Humans will adapt and overcome these things because that's what humans do. You know, but humans will always fight the systems which they're. It's like the whole fucking Matrix. I mean, the Matrix make a
Well,
it's
yeah,
a
but I
shitload,
mean,
but
they'll
they
fight the
make a good point about it.
system.
But they
Well,
make a point
sure.
about it. It's like we tried to make a perfect world and human brains wouldn't accept it. And that's
Sure,
what
but
it
I
would be
mean,
like.
even if the Matrix outcome happens, that's such an awful fucking outcome.
But then they come out of it again, don't they? I mean, that's the point. You can oppress people for a while. You can't oppress people indefinitely. It doesn't work. Every form of oppression that has ever existed has been overcome
I mean,
in time.
sure, but it's kind of like after seeing the 20th century, I don't want to see what human beings can do with power much greater than was held in the 20th century. Like, even if we do come out of that, we came out of the 20th century, but that's still like, the Soviet Union, Maoist China, Nazi Germany. That's still not shit I want to repeat. And if we repeated it in the modern day, even if we overcame it, it would be to a much greater extent of both
Of course
breadth
we're gonna.
and
Of course we're
intimacy.
going to repeat. Of course we're going to repeat it. Don't be so stupid. I mean, that's all humans do. We do the same things over and over and over again.
Well, exactly, but like
I mean,
us repeating it.
how many races have been like legitimately? How many like complete genocides have there been? It's not one or two, hundreds, thousands probably in human history. Complete genocides of a culture and a people.
Sure, but I think based on the
When we're at
technology
tribal
and
stages.
sure, but I still think the genocides of the 20th century were unique in some way based on both the technology and the Nietzschean God is dead, let's mold everything to our image ideology of the 20th century. Like, we overcame that, but I would still say the 20th century's genocides were like uniquely horrible within the scope of human history. And I don't want to see what
No,
people do with that with
well,
20th
like
century technology.
maybe Mao killed a lot of people, but he's the only one who really did. I mean, like historically, there've been way bigger genocides than what happened in the 20th century.
Yeah, but I mean, the point I'm making is that Hitler and shit like fucking gassed people or like shit like that. They didn't go into these like medical procedures to alter someone's like brain chemistry to suit what they want and shit. So the point I'm making is with advanced
look at the number,
or super intelligent AI, which are much smarter than humans hypothetically. Like if we create that, like we're just fucked. Like that's kind of the point I'm making.
well, no, AIs will only do what they're told. They can't. They'll never think for themselves. They'll only do what's within the parameters of the programming.
Well, there's a lot of problems with that.
Like the idea that they're going to become self-aware and stuff is a complete fantasy.
Well, even if they don't, you can fuck up in the programming. You can give them a directive that is like so weighted beyond human comprehension, where it's
and
like,
of course, nobody would build it with an off switch. Yeah, but
sure, but I mean, even that point being granted, even the point
like anything else.
Even the point being granted that the super intelligent AI, like, you know, not self-aware and are completely in human control, what human would you entrust to be in control of that is the point I'm making.
Well, you wouldn't put a human in charge of it, would you?
Even a council or collective of humans like the United Nations or any national government, with that kind of power, no individual or collective of humans can be trusted with it.
No, but you can't trust a human with anything. That's why we make mistakes. That's why things happen in the first place, isn't it?
Yeah, but the point I'm making is that
everything that can be built will be built.
The point I'm making is just that getting into futuristic technology, the consequences of humans not being trusted with power are going to be magnified. Whether or not we get through that or not, it's still going to carry like disastrous consequences. And we obviously have to look into that.
Our ability to deal with it will also because whenever a new piece of technology comes, the ability to also defend against it or to repair from it is also invented. Yeah, like if you had destroyed a village 100 years ago, could have taken generations to recover from it. Now we'd rebuild it in a fucking afternoon. You know, it's not the same thing.
Sure, but like with nuclear weapons, the only reason we don't use them is
nuclear
because
weapons
of mutually
aren't a thing. I keep telling you. There's not going to ever be a nuclear war. It's not going to happen.
That's because of like mutually assured destruction.
Because they're a completely ineffective 1950s piece of technology. You cannot launch an ICBM from China and hit a first world country. It's a fantasy.
And I'm not saying that that's the threat. I'm just saying, like, what happens after that? What are we going to develop in the 2000s before the 2100s that is going to be that much more intense existentially?
Will be.
And what human would you trust with that? Where it's like technology gets to the point where even if you trusted...
What humans being trusted with them now?
Humans that don't want to get wiped out.
Yeah,
but I'm
super
saying
devastating technology does exist. It's just not nuclear weapons.
Yeah, but it's also like when you get past the point where it's just like mass obliteration and where it gets more subtle, where it gets like where you can affect things very reliably on a much smaller scale, but still of that magnitude that I get concerned.
Actually, the weapons aren't mass obliteration because they're ineffective. That's not how you do it. That's not what they're designed. No one's trying to kill mass populations.
That's the point, though. But it's like I'm talking about what comes next from that.
It's much easier to cripple countries with damaging infrastructure than it is killing people. Killing people is actually time-consuming and tedious activity. It's not a good way of achieving things. They're much better off just destroying their infrastructure so they can't do anything.
Yeah, I'm saying we have the right checks against them now, but what happens next? Well, and you're saying we can trust the checks that come next, but like humanity is already advancing at a much faster rate than it had previously. I'm just a bit more.
But those things are all currently in check, aren't they? Right? No one's. There isn't anybody. Well, except for possibly China releasing a.
Well, no, you already have social media technology where it's like it has a significant effect on the elections within countries. What happens if you can fuck with people's minds directly and not just in terms of the input that their minds receive.
Yeah, you can already do that.
Yeah, but if that becomes like more easily applicable to larger segments of the US population, or just the world
it's already there.
population in general.
It already exists, to be honest.
Okay, I'm just saying that I'm much more black-pilled about the the escalation of that kind of thing.
I'll drop out there.
Okay, I'm just saying I'm more
Oh.
concerned about the escalation of that sort of thing.
Well, it just doesn't matter. This is a really simple thing about humanity. Everything that can be built will be built. That's it. End of story. Somebody will make it. It'll happen. There's no restraining technology. It's not possible.
Billy Blog says that oil guy, what do you think happens to the population once all the infrastructure destroyed, combined with the fallout and man-made plagues being released?
Yeah, well, that's the point, isn't it? You don't have to bother doing it yourself. You just destroy their infrastructure and watch them cannibalize themselves.
Yeah, but I mean, if everyone does that to each other, I guess is kind of the point.
Yeah, but you can't. You gotta understand. Only some countries can do it to some countries. Not everybody can do it to everyone. There will be, in the event of this sort of thing happening, there will be very definite winners and losers, and we already know who they will be.
Okay, I guess one way of wording it is I think certain powers, it's not. I think with certain powers, it's not just the question of on an international scale, right? Like maybe the US can beat out China on shit, but it's like,
no, it's really
what
simple.
would the US government do
thought,
to its own citizens?
If China thought for a second right now that it could win, it would be fighting. It knows for a fact that it can't win right now, but it's building. They're building shit like fuck.
Right, but I'm saying I'm also concerned about
it's
the
not
treatment
that it's not that they don't have the will to do it. They definitely have the will to be at war. They're just choosing not to be because they know that they'll likely lose at the minute.
Right, but I'm also talking. But I'm not just talking about internationally, though. I'm talking about the will of a government towards its own citizens, which is a much different position than China versus the US.
Governments change constantly, so it doesn't really matter. And the point of the government's changing is that nobody really has the time to do that sort of stuff. That's why we change. That's why we have elections and things like that.
Right, but I'm saying if a government
so that
had,
a person cannot do the sort of things that Xi Jinping has done.
Right, but I'm saying like if a government had like late 21st century technology,
well, it does have late
to like fuck with its own population. No, I mean like the point being that governments already quote unquote fortify their elections. It's like when technology gets like even more intense than that, like.
But you're missing the point. They've already got technology 20 years in advance of what you're thinking about anyway. You don't know what is available because, oddly enough, the military don't advertise what they've got for strange, inexplicable reasons. So you have to assume that everything that most of what you think might be made in the late 21st century already exists.
Okay, well then the question remains: what will actually exist in the late 20th century?
The military's had laser weapons for about the last 35 years. Ghost technology exists. These are not, the point is, it's not being used, is it? No military's ever deployed any ghost technology, but it definitely exists.
But is that a question of backlash?
No, it's because you don't use your good shit until you absolutely need to. The military has a huge history of developing technology that becomes obsolete and is superseded before it's ever deployed because
but what happens at the point? But what happens at the point where you get good shit where if you use it, there's no like retaliation that is sufficient to counter it?
what happens, isn't it? That is war.
But I mean, if it can't be
You want to be on
countered,
the
then
you
we're
want to
all
be on this
fucked.
you want to be on this side that has it. That's the
Yeah, but I mean, the point I'm making is that if you look at Western countries' treatment towards their own citizens, even the sides that have it are
tend to
going to screw
deploy
over their own
weapons of mass
people with
destruction
it.
against their own populations, do they?
Well, I'm not talking about weapons of mass destruction. I'm talking about direct psychological alteration.
Yeah, it's called school.
No, I'm talking about stuff that's more dystopian, like 1984 or Brave New World.
What,
What?
drugs?
A massive drug problem.
Yeah. Because the
Well,
US
that
doesn't
or
have a massive
direct,
drug
like,
problem
surgery
largely
on a
funded by the
person's brain.
CIA. Well, that's a bit fucking, low resolution, isn't it? You've got to do that to every fucking person in your country. That's a bit fucking time consuming.
Well, it is right now, but I'm saying, what about 100 years from now?
100 years from now, you probably won't be any humans anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of disturbing to me.
Well, it'll just be a simulation. It'll be fine. I mean, how do you know you're not a simulation now?
That is a
Let's
fair
really
question.
let's really get into it. You have to assume at some point that computer games will become, indistinguishable from real life. How do you know you're not just like an NPC in my game? I mean, obviously, I must be the main character because I'm the best one.
I guess my main like point onto my perspective about that thing is like teleological and combined with the philosophical zombie argument to get to a point of Christianity being true.
Okay,
Guys, I'm gonna have to dip off for a second.
Oi, Bezic,
yeah.
what were you saying, mate?
So even if we do have this mind control things, like it doesn't really make a difference. What can we do about it if it does come out? Are the governments going to give us a choice in the matter? Is it even worth considering?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly the point I'm making. I'm black-pilled when that point comes. If humanity makes it through that, I think it'll be a miracle. And I'll be happy for the miracle if that happens. I'm just not as optimistic about it.
Thank you.
I think the chances of the government coming up with either a mind control ray or some kind of surgery that they can shove people through like cattle in a meat processing factory, you got to think that at some point people will just say no, even if the alternative
What about
is
like
death.
Well, I mean, what about like nanobots though?
Oh, well, if we've got nanobots, we're just fucked anyway, and it's not even worth
Well,
considering.
yeah, I mean that's the point I'm making though. Like, what can humanity do in 100 years? I'm saying like
What
there's a
can
decent amount of
humanity
shit
do when
there.
the sun explodes?
Well, yeah, sure. I'm just making the point that I think that technology within 100 years, there's numerous points of like governments developing technology where fucked is the point I'm making. I'm not saying we'll be able to do anything about it. I'm just saying there's a point where I worry that humanity just gets fucked by having power beyond its ability to use wisely.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure people have had that concern for like the last 400 years.
Oh, absolutely. But I think when you get to the point of editing human nature with science, you get to a specific threshold that isn't quite matched by like mass weaponry or like nukes, no matter how effective they are or whatever else.
Say that, but you have to do it to every human. I mean, that's quite a fucking challenge. It's not like you can just point a it's going to require, sort of, memory editing and things like that. It's not going to be just like giving somebody a pill, right? You're going to have to do, writing people's memory. I mean, I'm pretty certain they're already.
But I mean, like, if it's
just about.
done with nanobots, would people have to consent
It's not
about
going to
that?
be done. It's not going to be done with
would they even have
nanobots.
to know about
Nanobots
that?
aren't a thing.
Well, I mean, well, the thing is, I'm not convinced that they won't be a thing within the next 100 years.
No, it seems very unlikely that they'll ever be very useful to do anything because it's just the power constraints. It's a sizing issue. There's only so much power something that size can generate. gives you, you might be able to build them to do very specific tasks. You'd have to create a specific bot to do a specific. This sort of idea that you can have one of these sort of magic spiders that does every single fucking thing, just not realistic.
I mean, how realistic would our modern computer technology seem to someone 100 years ago?
Well, 100 years ago, they'd already come up with theories to build computers. It's just a matter of working them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean the early designs of them are just unbelievable.
Yeah.
They're actual machines. Yeah.
Like, remember, we had functional computers in World War II.
Yeah.
That's how we worked to break Enigma.
Yeah.
Sure, but it's also the question of we're operating with human intelligence. If we can create some kind of AI of like beyond human intelligence, what barriers get cracked then?
But it won't be beyond human intelligence. It'll have a very fast version of human intelligence. You can't make something that's smarter than you.
I don't know. My parents did a good enough job of that.
Yeah, but you can only a computer has to be designed, and it can only be designed by a human. He can only design it to be as smart as he is. I can only design it with the limits of thought that he has himself, the programming. The computers aren't going to become self-aware and start programming themselves. It's not going to. You got. There has to be a distinction between what is science fiction and what is science fact.
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely.
But certainly not in our lifetimes to be doing the sort of things that people are suggesting.
Right, but within like the next 100 or 200 years, man, that's the point where I'm kind of like.
Also, people will build them with off switches. They will.
Yeah, but the point I'm making. Yeah, but do you trust your government?
They're not just going to be randomly tethered to the internet.
What does it matter if we trust our governments with any of this stuff we're even talking about? I don't trust the government with any of the shit we've got now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the point I'm making. If the government is the one with the off switch to it, and they're not willing to pull it so long as it corresponds to their agenda, then we're fucked, is the point I'm making.
But it
doesn't have to be like work, be like a government.
Matter?
No, but it's sort of irrelevant because do you know what? Governments don't make anything. The governments don't make stuff. People like me make stuff. Government doesn't tell me what I can and cannot fucking make. We make stuff, and then we go to the government. Do you want to buy this shit?
Yeah, so somebody sells that shit to the government.
Yeah,
and then they have the off switch.
But the guy who can make it still exists. He can make another. It's not like these are coding and stuff can be replicated. It's not the government you have to worry about. Is my point.
I mean, I'd worry about the government or private actors.
It's like when I have sort of secrets, I have to sign for the secrets and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, you can't take any of this paper out of here. And it's like, I don't need that. I'm the guy who designed it. I don't need the fucking paper. I can just draw it again. It's not that fucking difficult.
Yeah, but how many people out of a concern for profit would sell that shit to the government, and then the government has the off switch on that kind of thing?
But also, the guy who designed it will also know how to switch it off.
The hypothetical you're giving second is, everything, it's impossible to do anything about it. Okay, so it's not even worth considering. It's exactly the same as contemplating the heat death of the universe. It's ridiculously far in the future, nothing we can do about it. It doesn't bear contemplation.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, if it's a point where, like, the government, private individuals are their hands on like future technology and like fucking over humanity with it, wouldn't we want to like consider that here and the now? Like, not talking about the abstract death of humans like millions of years for now. I'm talking about like human individuals or governments with like super intelligent AI within the next 100 or 200 years. And it's like, yeah, we might all be fucked at that point, but it's like, should we not take the consideration now for
Okay,
where that leads
what is
to?
the consideration now, though? What steps do we take that stops these things definitively without the CIA doing shit behind our backs?
And I'm not necessarily arguing we could do something about that. I'm making the that oil guy is being too optimistic with shit where it's like humans will just adapt to this and like overcome this, where I think at that point like maybe we can't do anything about it, but if the government's doing that to its own citizens or hostile governments are doing it, I just kind of think humanity's fucked at that point.
Well, humanity will either be fine or humanity will either be fucked. It's not exactly a great deal that we can do if we end up in the Matrix.
Sure, but I'm just saying I don't see that as an unlikely outcome in the next 200 years.
Yeah, but I mean, like the world teeters on the brink at all times, you know.
Yeah, I just don't think that like weapons of destruction and war are the same as what futuristic technology could conceivably generate as to its intimacy and scale of fucking with human nature. Like I think the threshold that is being spoken of by people who talk about the singularity is much different threshold than that of past like weapon development or that of past like technology development. I think it's a fundamentally different threshold in kind and not just of magnitude.
You'd have to do it to all people in all places at all times. It just wouldn't work. There are too many humans. It's just not. It's not practical.
And I just doubt that they wouldn't be able to get most of humanity within the next 200 years is the point I'm making.
You don't think people would start to notice as it was done and perhaps rebel against it?
Yeah, but like I mean if something greater than human technology gets produced, then what is like the human technology or the human intelligence of the person's going to do with that?
Blow that shit up.
If they can.
Pretty much how we've dealt with everything all the way through history.
But if this shit gets like proliferated by the US government, what is any other government going to do that? I said that nukes are ineffective from other countries against the US government. So if the
Yeah,
US
but they're not
government gets
ineffective from this country. I said China couldn't launch one at the first world country and hit it. I didn't say no first world country could launch one at you and hit you.
I mean, sure, yeah.
These are small but significant differences.
I don't know. I'm just kind of black-pilled on it.
The only country America really ever has to worry about is us. For a reason. You know, like you look at the stuff the UK builds. Who's it building to fight it? Who's it building? You know, we don't build stealth drones to fight Afghans, do we?
Okay, so I have a friend who really wants in. He's a part of the Discord already. Would you mind, Bezic, or would that be like okay?
If it had been like an hour ago, it wouldn't have been an issue, but I was hoping to wind things up.
Okay.
Like, are you off my phone, please? What number to read? Number 7.
I was actually trying to wind things up like half an hour ago, but we got all weird and existential. We have been going for 6.5 hours. God knows why.
Well, it's because it's fun, dude. Don't
This
even
is
gotta
true.
think about it. So fucking stupid, bro.
It's very good value for money.
It is.
I wouldn't call it premium content, but it's content.
Well, for the price that's being paid for entry.
This is your mom.
Crikey, mate.
Yeah, but we've also got well, that's my
I don't know, but my friend might want in on the next podcast. So that would that be fine, even if like this one's obviously been going on a bit long.
That probably won't be much of a problem. I don't see why it'd be an issue.
Where's that put my box?
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
I think we should go
Yeah,
find it.
we can bring your friend in on the next
Yeah,
one.
but my
Don't see why we can't.
like 9:30. No, my dad's picking me up.
But yeah, does anyone have anything they desperately want to add, or can I start wrapping things up?
You're like,
Yeah, I'm good.
I guess I would say as one last thing, real quick, because I'm writing the family values sections of my book, and it is that a major problem I see with humanity is the deterioration of relationships. You know, certain familial relationships, such as the parent-child relationship or marriage, are supposed to be largely unconditional, and now it's kind of being pushed to like a matter of convenience. Like if you're in a difficult time with your partner, leave them, or if your relationship with your parents is difficult, cut them out of your life. And there are such situations where that's justifiable, but as a general rule, I think it is the unconditional nature of that that benefits the moral character of man, of being pushed to push on even when it doesn't benefit you directly. I think it transforms the human spirit, you know, within familial or friendship relationships. And I see too many people abandoning that nowadays and just taking the relationships that are convenient to them. And I think that makes people a lot more selfish and a lot more morally degraded. And so that's all I'm saying. When you have family, when you have friends, be loyal to the point where the edge case happens and you're like, okay, I can't do anything here. Loyalty amongst personal relationships is one of the most sacred and valuable things a human being can have. And don't throw that away, fight for it. And where
I
it fails, shrug it off and maintain that with your other relationships.
I agree. I agree 100%. In fact, I'd expand it even further if it was to do anything, even to the friendship level relationships. People are so willing to throw away any relationship that isn't 100% perfect for them.
Or not willing to start one to begin with like a marriage or having standard.
Well, I think it all a lot of that does come from a general fuck up of society where we've gone. The life's not worth living. Like, thanks the last
Yeah.
100 years of philosophy for that.
It's like this misanthropic shit, which I think is a cancer. But yeah, I mean, to close off this podcast, I guess we're promoting a message of dadism. Be dadist, bros.
Yeah. Yes, be daddist, eat red meat, don't simp, and don't drink fruity girly drinks.
Hey, I'll drink fruity girly drinks, but I'll also throw back several shots of 151 shit. So I feel like I have my manly credentials.
Okay. I'll let it go with that, but I can't make any promises about oil.
No, I wouldn't expect you to.
Alright, yeah. We'll try and get your friend in to join us next week. Other than that, I think we might call it here.
Oh yeah, sounds good with me.
I need food. It's been like 13 hours since I ate.
Bro, I'm like drunk and it's like 4 in the afternoon. What have you guys done to me?
We've educated
No, I made the
you.
choice. I'm not a leftist. I'm responsible for my own actions.
Based. Based and what is it? Whiskey pilled.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll call it here, folks, in the chat. Thanks once again for joining us for God knows how, way too long. It's been another awesome night, and it's been good to have you all. Look forward to seeing you all next week for some more of this insanity.
Alright, peace, my dudes.
Shadilay, everyone. Good night, all. I hope you enjoyed this segment from the Sultans of Shadilay podcast.
If you like this segment, please click like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out the full podcast in the description below.